Hi, Larry Alterman here, and I've done many videos on cycle stop valves and given you many reasons not to buy them. But what I realize is that these reasons are sort of spread out all over my videos. So I've decided to put one video together that lists in one place the top 10 reasons not to buy a cycle stop valve. So let's get going. Number 10. Cycle stop valves are expensive. A cycle stop valve is nothing more than a pressure reducing valve with an internal leak built into it. They try to make it like it's something fancy or something really sophisticated, but it isn't. And if you do need a cycle stop valve, you can make it yourself cheaper, as I show in this video that I made presenting 5 solutions that duplicate or exceed functionality, CSV functionality, while saving you money. Number 9. Unstable pressure at the beginning of a run. Cycle stop valves likes to tell you that with their valve you get constant pressure. And you do get constant pressure once it eventually stabilizes. But at the very beginning of each run, you always get unstable pressure. Why is this? Because when you start a run, the pressure tank will be at the higher level. Let's say in this example 60 pounds. The CSV is set to 50. The pump will be off when you start the run. So the pressure will start at 60. The pressure reducing valve will limit it to 50. The pressure will go down and down and down. It will hit 50. And as it goes below 50, the pressure coming out of the system going to the house will go all the way down to 40. At this time, the pump will go on and the pressure will slowly go back up from 40 to 50. Only after the pressure goes back up to 50 will it stabilize. So first it will go down from 50 to 40, then it will go back up from 40 to 50, and finally it will stabilize after some time. So you do not get constant pressure all the time with a cycle stop valve. Number 8. Longer tank refill time. This is because when it's time to refill the pressure tank, it gets refilled at what they call a dribble rate of 1 gallon per minute. Suppose you have a 5-gallon pressure tank, a small pressure tank like they recommend. At 40-60 pressure, that means that the drawdown is 1.25 gallons. Of course, when the CSV is running, the tank is already half full. So when the water of the house is not being used anymore, only half a tank has to be filled. That means only 0.625 gallons has to be refilled in the tank. But at 1 gallon per minute, that still takes 38 seconds to refill this tiny little tank. Okay. Normally, if you have a pump going at 10 gallons per minute unrestricted, it would only take 3 seconds to refill a tank. 3 seconds versus 38 seconds. Number 7, longer pump run time. When you have a CSV, your pump will be running far longer, far more often than if you don't have a CSV. Why is this? For 2 reasons. The first reason is the one I just explained in number 8, that it takes longer to refill the tank. The other reason has to do with the rate at which the water is being used. Suppose that you have a tank that can deliver 14 gallons per minute. What happens in a normal system without a CSV is that the pump will quickly fill up the pressure tank and then go off until the pressure tank is used up, and then it will go on again for a few seconds until the pressure tank is used up. With a CSV, the pump will remain on. Okay, suppose the house is drawing only 2 gallons per minute, but your pump is capable of delivering 14 gallons per minute. That means that your pump will stay on 7 times longer than it needs to. Normally it would just go on for a short amount of time, 1/7 of the time, because 14 divided by 2 is 7. It would only be on 1/7 of the time, but with a cycle stop valve it would be on all the time. So with a cycle stop valve you always get longer pump run times. They like to claim that you save pump wear and tear because of less cycles, but they don't tell you about how much longer your pump actually runs. Number 6, less efficient, uses more electricity. This is related to number 7. Since the pump is on a lot longer, it uses a lot more electricity. So it's far less efficient using a CSV than without a CSV. Now, the cycle stop valve man, Carrie Austin, likes to tell you that that's not true, that as the pressure goes up, the back pressure goes up, the pump actually uses less electricity. That is not really true. It might be slightly true in some very contrived cases, but it doesn't nearly make up for how much longer the pump is actually running. So Carrie Austin will give you some example with some very fancy pump saying that if there's so much back pressure on the pump will become 50% more efficient, but it can be running 10, 20 times longer than it would without the cycle stop valve. So his very contrived and convoluted reasoning isn't really truthful. It's just a made-up thing. In truth, a cycle stop valve will cause you to use far more electricity than you would without a cycle stop valve. Number 5, big pump penalty. With a normal system, without a CSV, if you have a big pump, it's not a problem. The big pump will quickly fill up the pressure tank, go off, and then wait for the pressure tank to be empty. The pump will then quickly fill it up and go off. The pump will only be on a small amount of time. The bigger the pump, the smaller amount of time that the pump will be on. If you have a CSV, however, that is not the case. The pump will be on the whole time, and the pump will be severely restricted. So if you're using, for example, 2 gallons per minute at your house, but the pump can deliver 30 gallons per minute, you're getting an inefficiency of a factor of 15, a 1500% inefficiency. Now, the cycle valve people like to say that some pumps, and believe me, it's only some specialized expensive pumps, but they like to say some pumps will use electricity when they're restricted. And even if you have a specialized pump that uses 50% less electricity when it's restricted, so 50% less, but a factor of 15, that's still a factor of 7.5, 750% inefficiency. So don't let them tell you that a cycle stop valve will not cause you to use more electricity. It most certainly will cause you to use more electricity. Number 4, more pump starts. Now, the cycle stop valve people like to tell you that the cycle stop valve will prevent you from cycling on and off. And I suppose that depends on your definition of the word cycle. If by cycle you mean go off after it's already been on and then back on again, then yes, they'd be correct. But that's not really what's important. What's important is the number of pump starts. How many times the pump starts up from not being started up to start up. And if you consider that, then there's actually usually more pump startups with a cycle stop valve than without it. Why is this? Because a cycle stop valve will stop the valve from cycling on a long run, but on a short run it only has this small pressure tank with a 1.25 gallon drawdown. So every time you wash your hands, every time you wash a dish, every time you flush a toilet, the pump will start up. It won't cycle, but it will start up. Okay? With a regular system with a large pressure tank, you can wash your hands, flush the toilet many times before the pump has to refill the pressure tank. So yes, it prevents cycling, but if you count the number of times that the pump starts up, it will be more with the cycle stop valve than without it. This is an example of how they mislead you. They tell you that it stops cycling, but they don't tell you that the pump will actually start up more times with a cycle stop valve than without it. Number 3, high back pressure could destroy your plumbing. To explain number 3, I'm going to set up a scenario. Suppose that you've had this system in place for a number of years. You have a well pump that can deliver 120 psi. You have a pressure tank and a pressure switch. That pressure switch is set to 40 to 60. Now, even though this pump can theoretically deliver up to 120 psi, that will never happen in these pipes. These pipes will never see 120 psi. That's because as soon as the pressure tank goes up to 60, the pressure switch will turn off the pump. So the pressure in these pipes might go up to 60 or a little bit more because of gravity down here, but it will basically stay in the range of 40 to 60. Now let's say you decide to add a CSV valve because you want constant pressure. You see, you put this valve right here set to 50 pounds. All of a sudden that valve is going to prevent this pump from turning off, and that's going to cause the pump to deliver up to 120 pounds of pressure in this pipe. This pipe has not seen 120 pounds of pressure. It's used to seeing 60 pounds of pressure, and these pipes might develop leaks, or in the worst case these pipes might fall apart. So if you decide to install a CSV, you better be very careful that the pipes leading from the pump to the CSV are compatible with the pressure of the pump. Number 2, a variable frequency drive. VFD is way better. Variable frequency drive, also known as inverter technology. This is where you have a device connected to your pump, and the device senses the pressure and controls the speed of the pump. Now this device will provide everything that a CSV will provide. It will provide constant pressure, and it will provide no cycling. It will go on every time that the water goes on, just like a CSV. But like a CSV, it will not cycle, and like a CSV, it will provide constant pressure, better than a CSV because it won't have the unstable pressure at the beginning of a run. Now, this device is really better than a CSV in every conceivable way, but the cycle stop valve people, knowing that they really can't compare to this device, try to tell you that their device is better than this, and they do it in two ways. The first is this with this convoluted, contrived example where they set up this scenario using the wrong variable frequency drive, and they make it so contrived and so convoluted. And in this convoluted, contrived example, they try to show you how the variable frequency drive will not work as well as a cycle stop valve. The example they give is so convoluted and contrived that I have to describe it as laughable in its scamosity. The other thing they try to tell you is that that a cycle stop valve is mechanical in nature, and this is electronic. And gee, you don't want an electronic thing controlling your pump. It's better to have a mechanical thing controlling your pump. Well, let's take a look at that logic for a second. Given that logic, we shouldn't use an iPhone. We should use an old telephone because this is mechanical. Given that logic, we shouldn't use a computer because that's complicated and electronic. We should use an old-fashioned typewriter. Given that logic, we shouldn't use a fancy clock with electronics in it because we should use an hourglass because it's mechanical. Given that logic, we shouldn't have modern communication. We should use smoke signals. Excuse me for this politically incorrect picture. And given that logic, we shouldn't use inverter technology for our air conditioners because we could use non-inverter technology. It's simpler. And we shouldn't use inverter technology for our refrigerators because we could use non-inverter technology. It's simpler. The logic just does not stand up. The fact is that a VFD is better than in every single way. It is about the same price. Well, the prices do vary a lot. I mean, because there's a lot of options in a VFD, but basically you could say they're about the same price. It's stable pressure at all times. You actually don't even need a pressure tank, but if you do have a pressure tank, which makes things a little bit smoother, then the pressure tank will be refilled quickly, not at the dribble rate. It will use less electricity. It will have soft stops and starts, which the CSV people claim that their product creates soft stops and starts. It's BS. It's no different than a pressure tank. The pump goes on suddenly and goes off suddenly. There's no soft stops and starts. But with a variable frequency drive, it starts up the pump slowly and stops it slowly. And then, of course, you don't have the problem with the excessive back pressure. So all in all, a variable frequency drive is better than a CSV in every conceivable way. Even if you want the functionality of a CSV, a variable frequency drive is better in every single way. And now, the #1 reason not to buy a cycle stop valve. Drum roll, please. #1. Why buy from a company whose business model is to fool you? And on this page I show a number of quotes. These are direct quotes either from some of their advertising or from their videos. For example, in one of his ads he says, a CSV can deliver constant water pressure with equal efficiency from small flows to as much as the pump could deliver. Outright, complete, and utter lie. Okay, this one. As flow is restricted, power consumption goes down so you don't lose efficiency. Again, the pump might become slightly more efficient, but that does not make up for the loss in flow. So again, a lie. CSVs reduce the number of pump cycles. I won't call that a complete lie. I'll call that misleading. They reduce the number of cycles, but they don't reduce the number of pump starts. The number of pump starts actually goes up. This one, a CSV delivers constant pressure. Misleading. It delivers constant pressure after the initial period of instability. And here is the worst lie of all. In one of his videos, he actually says, in the main video that he has with all those views, it is simulation, he actually says, even if you open up all the taps to the house, this is without a CSV now, even if you open up all the taps to the house, your pump will keep on cycling. That's the most ridiculous, utter, outright lie I've ever heard. So what he's saying is that no matter how small your pump is, and no matter how many taps you open up, your pump is going to cycle on and off. How can that be? How can it raise the pressure tank up to the proper level if all the faucets in the house are on? It's impossible. It's a complete lie. I don't even know how he can put it in there. Either he knows it's a complete lie or he's lying anyhow. I don't know which is the right thing, but that is an example of an utter, unbelievable lie that's in one of his videos. Okay, so I repeat, why buy from a company whose business model is to fool you? Okay, so that's the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope and I think this will be my very last cycle stop valve video. I think I've said everything that I need to say, and I don't think I can say anything more about cycle stop valves. If you still want to buy one, go ahead, but don't say I didn't warn you. That's it for now. Larry Elterman signing out.